Okay, we are continuing the last chapter of this book. It is called The Open Records and Anti-Adoption Movements, and I will also be reading the conclusion. This is fairly short, so bear that in mind. Fairly short as in the chapter, but it'll probably take about 20 to 30 minutes to read through this, so keep in mind we got a bit. All right, so Lori Carangelo starts off with this quote from Robert Frost in The Mending Wall. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offense. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that just wants it to tear it down. Ooh, okay. The Open Records movement in America, which challenges the falsification and sealing of adoptees' original birth records, was preceded by the anti-adoption effort that challenges the constitutionality of adoption itself. To help understand the goals of both movements, one has only to review the meanings of the accepted definition and the terms associated with these movements, as defined by popular dictionaries. Those what are now termed anti-adoption issues were first advanced by Jean Patton through her writings published in the early 1950s, especially in her Log of Orphan Voyage newsletter. Webster Dictionary defines the terms most often used to support sealed records: privacy, the state of not being seen by others; confidentiality, unaccountable; and secrecy, concealment, the condition of being secret or hidden, the habit of keeping secrets. When these terms are used in privacy laws and confidentiality policies against the wishes of the person being protected, or to withhold a record from the person named in the record, one must understand who and what is actually protected or unaccountable. Shouldn't a cause be required to seal a vital record rather than to open one? In response to pro-adoption activists' claims that sealed records imposed by state law protect the biological mother's privacy, in Doe v. Sundquist, 1997, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit found the information concerning birth is not protected from disclosure by the federal Constitution, and privacy does not encompass a general right to non-disclosure of private information. A biological parent's privacy, or anyone else's, can be adequately protected by tort law, including restraining orders. Statistically, only 1 to 2% of relinquishing mothers found by their adult adopted children refuse contact with them. According to the experience of both state-run and private search and reunion entities, many more than having 100,000 registrants annually. The prevalence of mothers searching for their children over the past several decades, and then their publicized reunions, would seem to refute the adoption agency's allegations, and that mothers required anonymity. In many 1950s and 1960s relinquishing mothers were blindfolded during labor and delivery to prevent maternal bonding. Yet decades later, they searched out and were reunited with their adult children, living proof of that failed experiment. Those few mothers who accept the adoption industry's permission to legally abandon their children and never look back may have a genetic or hormonal short circuit, perhaps a permanent postpartum depression or separation trauma akin to post-traumatic stress disorder, both of which have been reported, and would explain the few who have dispassionately responded, "I do not feel I am his or her mother." The following definition, based on the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, Second College Edition, states: anti-adoption, against adoption. 1. The normality of the intact, assisted, or extended biological family. Adjective, to refuse to choose and bring into certain relationship, specifically to refuse to permit a non-related person or persons to take into the non-related persons or person's family by legal or illegal process and raise as that person's or person's own child. 2. To reject and not use the ideas, policies, or practices of adoptions as one's own. 3. To not choose adoption in favor of truer expressions of custody which do not commodify children and which do not remove a child's equal protection rights for life in exchange for a home and care. Several countries do not practice adoption. In America, the term anti-adoption began to take hold when National Council for Adoption, NCFA, used it to refer to anyone who was in opposition to its policies and activities. NCFA also referred to AMFOR and its thousands of supporters at the time as that small noisy group. In Anti-Adoption Activists Defy Popular Opinion by Drew Sefton, Newhouse News Service, written in 2004, readers were asked who could oppose placing an unwanted child for adoption, and answers an entire movement, it turns out, fighting with a primal passion to expose what activists insist is adoption's darker side, the lifelong trauma of mothers coerced into surrendering their babies, adoptees denied their heritage and made to feel they had been unwanted. And they say a billion-dollar industry that forces more money on youngsters' welfare. Yeah. Whew. So, if you were to ask me, am I anti-adoption? 1000%. Okay. Now, yes, I am out of the fog. Yes, I'm an adoptee. Most adoptees are anti-adoption because of the legal process. And I try to explain that. It's not that we don't want a child when necessary to have a safe and loving home, but the legal portion of adoption literally changes and erases our own history. And that is not okay. So there are other legal options that cover what could do in replacement as you raise a child. You can still be the parent without changing any of that. Kinship, guardianship, and legal guardianship to begin with. Bless you. But, okay, sorry. But yeah, I mean, and again, the amount of adoptions where it is necessary is less than 5% for privatized infant adoption. But it is a $14.1 billion industry in profit, and that is where it's disgusting. Every immoral law must be disobeyed. Jack Kevorkian, the Right to Die activist. Who are they? Both the open records movement and the anti-adoption movement are composed not only of the adoption-affected individuals and the organizations that represent them, but also individuals and organizations concerned about the violations of basic civil and human rights. People who are anti-adoption may also be members of open records organizations, and vice versa. Open records group and individuals who were primarily research support groups began to proliferate and network as they defied government by circumventing sealed record laws to help adoptees and parents reconnect post-adoption. Movement Retrouvé, headquartered in Quebec City, is Canada's equivalent to the American Open Records movement. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a timeline on different parts, because this way you can kind of grasp what the movement has been doing for a while. So this starts with the Open Records Movement organization. It was founded in 1954 by Jean Patton through the Orphan Voyage. In 1973, Yesterday's Children by Donna Colum, as well as the Adoption Forum was founded by Penny Patridge the same year. So these are 3 different organizations now for the same thing. In 1975, the International Soundex Reunion Registry, ISRR, founded by Emma V. Velarde, is the oldest and largest existing free and voluntary reunion registry for adoptees, parents, and others. In 1976, Adoptive Parents for Open Records, APFOR, was founded by Carol Gustafson. Okay, hold on, there's a lot here. Also in 1973, Adoptee Liberty Movement Association, ALMA, founded by Florence Fisher, and the Concerned United Birth Parents, CUB, founded by Lee Campbell, which in 1978, the American Adoption Congress, AAC, was initiated by Gene Patton, who together with Margaret Lawrence and David Sadoff, comprised AAC's first board of directors. AAC became the umbrella organization for the groups that were interested in lobbying for open records legislation, but with changes in leadership, were more seen as an umbrella for adoptee parent search businesses, some netting as much as $60,000 a year on family search services. Okay, now I'm being grossed out by that, but yeah, if you guys know, like, Ancestry helps with some of these things. I mean, obviously Ancestry DNA has not been around that long comparatively, but same idea. They make billions of dollars because adoptees are trying to find their records and trying to search for family. In 1980, Origins US, co-founded by Mary Ann Cohen and Marcia Ribin, was opened. In 1980, the Adoption Triangle Ministries was opened. 1987, Alarm Network, founded by Sandra K. Musser. 1989, Americans for Open Records, AM4, founded by Lori Carangelo, the author of this book, was open. In 1996, Bastard Nation, a new generation for adoptees engaged in open reform, founded by Usenet News Group, that included Shea Grimm, Marley Grainer, Lainey Peterson, and Damsel Plum. In 1999, Adoptees and Birth Parents for Open Records Nationwide, ABORN, co-founded by Jen Goad and Jeep Driving Genius, there's no name, those who assailed Jeep's performance for anonymity, were quickly squelched by a reminder that neither are adoptees' true identities known even to themselves. Okay, the anti-adoption movement organizations by year. Here's the timeline. In 1989, Americans for Open AM4, founded by Lori Carangelo, a mother, and coined the phrase government-protected child stealing, and Carangelo versus Connecticut, a case-long opposition to government-protected child stealing, which is, by the way, on paperback on Amazon. I will be reading from that eventually, but noted you should go buy her books because I'm very fascinated with these. In 1998, Adoption Legalized Lies, founded by Jessica Del Balzo, who is neither an adoptee nor a parent. She was a college student outraged by the civil rights violations inherent in American adoption. In 2004, Mothers in Exile, founded by Kay Russell, a mother, and 2006, Pound Pup Legacy, co-founded by Carrie Semin, RN, an adoptee, and Niels Hugeveen of Use Adoptees, is a relatively newcomer to the anti-adoption scene, and is devoted to uncovering cases of adoptees who have been abused and or killed by their adopters. Oh, that's interesting. I'm going to check that out. Pound Pup Legacy. You guys know I'm going to be covering these cases, so I will put a warning on them. I will do trigger warning TW, just in case, for you guys. In 2011, Adoptive Mothers Against Adoption, founded by Jody R. Landers, an adopter of 6 children, with the focus of being to recruit 100 adoptive moms to raise funds and create a world where the adoption of orphans is not necessary. Sorry, I have to eye roll it sometimes because, of course, the adoptive parents, I adopted and I'm the savior, and then now they're doing this. Now, that's not to say Jody isn't a good person. It's just when I read things like that as an adoptee, it just makes me sick. Okay, adopters against adoption. Adopters are still lured by the false assurance that with love, any child can be raised to meet the adopter's expectations. Rhetoric about the benefits of adoption can only be believed if you discount the fact that adopters are subject to the same problems of living as biological parents. Today, adopters may be married, single, well-educated, or borderline illiterate, lead mainstream or alternative sexual, social, and spiritual lifestyles, and be of a different race and nationality than the child they adopt. Adoptive parents, like biological parents, may divorce or otherwise abandon the child due to change in finances. So that happens a lot. Substance abuse problems or disenchantment with the child as his dissimilar personality or so-called attachment disorder emerges. For the past 2 decades, only 16% of adoptees are being raised in two-parent adoptive families. And this is according to Living Arrangements of Children, fall 1996 was the census report, but it was released in 2001. In the 1970s, adopters were encouraged to tell their children of their adoptions, but to sugarcoat it with the chosen child story. I hate that reinforced their perception of having first rejected by their original parents, being special isolated them, and now adult adoptees in the 1970s through the 80s are rebelling against the unrealistic expectations and prohibitions of the adoption industry, particularly expectation of lifelong secrecy origins. I'm actually not going to read through this timeline that she gives because I feel like you guys can just get the book and read through it. It's mostly just more organizations or books. But it's from 1955 to 2001. The chronology of adopters' issues and activism. I'm just going to say there's not that many adoptive parents that are willing to stand with adoptees, and that is a huge problem, at least that I've seen. So yeah. Okay, we're continuing on now. What adopters can do. Sealed records are a form of child abuse, and that is according to Sharon Kaplan, who has a BSW MS, who's adopter and director parenting resources in Tustin, California. Nancy Verrier, MAFT adopter and the author of The Primal Wound. Hey guys, you can check that out. That's on my channel already. It is important to recognize that the adoptee was present when the substitution of mothers took place. The experience was real, that they do not consciously remember the event should not detract from their truth. They are not abnormal, sick, or crazy. Their feelings are an appropriate response to the most devastating experience one could ever have, the loss of the mother. The adoptee's loss must be acknowledged, validated, and worked through so that they can gain a new attitude toward it and begin to gain a sense of self for who they are, their self-esteem, and their self-worth. And never say, "We chose you," because the child was first unchosen by their first mother and would never choose this. So that's right. Even if you asked us, we would never choose adoption, even if it's the top 1%. Okay? That's what people don't understand. Okay, moving on. The ones who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who can do it. That is by Steve Jobs, who was adopted, by the way. He was an adoptee. He was also the founder of Apple Computer. And yeah, you can read more about his experience. Conclusion. Depending on one's personal resilience, an adult might overcome severe adverse personal circumstances such as physical and mental disabilities, poverty, loss of loved ones, and even physical and sexual abuse, but add to an adopted child's burden from their feelings of abandonment and rejection, compounded by subsequent losses from, or for instance, adoptive parents' death or abandonment, failed relationships, physical, sexual, or emotional abuse, and we expectantly increase the risk of creating permanently damaged human beings. So far, Americans' response has been to dispose of them in America's foster care, adoption, and prison industries, or to sell them for slave labor, or to pedophiles and rapists for child sex trafficking. And that was quoted in the New York Times 2018 article, U.S. Losses Another 1,500 Migrant Children. Some of the problems and examples, and some of the alternatives, and some of the alternatives, but certainly not all, have been offered in this book. While the COVID-19 pandemic and the economy are among several priorities of the Biden administration, activists and anarchists alike see 2021 to 2024 as the now or never chance to change the status quo. Electronic activism has enabled armchair adoption activists to support online petitions and social media campaigns, mass emails, and tweets. But it will take organized masses such as the Me Too movement, civil rights marchers, and the other fractions to visibly, publicly oppose, protest, shame, and influence legislators about the failure of foster care and adoption, the damage each has done to generations past and present. In recent years, school children have staged walkouts to protest gun violence. Women have sued powerful men for sexual abuse and protested for control over their own bodies. And aging pioneers of reform and abolition look to a new generation for young journalists, legislators, and activists on college campuses to embrace the complex rights issues inherent in America's failed foster care and adoption systems. A visibly protest hidden agenda en masse to effect positive change. America can do better for its children and families.